Good morning. Can you pull me up, Liz? Or is it on? If you would. Do what? Okay. If you would, please turn in your Bibles to the Old Testament book of Ruth. We'll be starting, Lord willing, in Ruth chapter 3 and verse 10. Up to this point, we've been going systematically, verse by verse, through this Bible book. And so you've seen this development of God taking a close personal view of a family, a particular family that left Bethlehem, made a 50 to 70 mile trek to the northeast, and went to live in another town, another region, another area, a group of people surrounding them that hated Israelites. And while there, a bunch of traumatic events take place that end up bringing them back. So let me do a real quick review with you here, and we'll kind of go through this, maybe. It's not doing it again. Joe, you got to do your magic again, man. Well, while they're doing that, will y'all please stand with me? We'll go to Ruth chapter 3, and we'll start in verse 10. Ruth 3:10 says this. Then he said, "Blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning. You did not go after young men, whether poor or rich." Verse 11 says, "And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request. For all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman. It is true that I am a close relative. However, there is a relative closer than I. Stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good, let him do it. But if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty for you. As the Lord lives, lie down until morning." Verse 14 says, "So she lay at his feet until morning, and she arose before one could recognize her. Then he said, 'Do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor.' Also he said, 'Bring the shawl that is on you and hold it.' And when she held it, he measured 6 ephahs of barley and laid it on her. Then she went into the city. When she came to her mother-in-law, she said, 'Is that you, my daughter?' She told her all that the man had done for her." Verse 17 says, "And she said, 'These 6 ephahs of barley he gave me, for he said to me, do not go empty-handed to your mother-in-law.' Then she said, 'Sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out, for the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day.'" Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for this amazing historical account of this family, and in particular of these ladies that we see in this great Bible book. Father, thank you for allowing us to see their heart, allowing us to see the dependence they had upon you, their trust in you. Thank you for allowing us to see this man Boaz and what he represents, and all the lessons that you teach us from now. Father, we ask that you fill us with your presence. Lord, I pray that all the confusion and doubt and distraction, the hurriedness of life, all those things can be set aside, and we can see you high and lifted up in all your glory. Father, I pray that you will heal the brokenness inside of us, that you'll restore the joy of your salvation. Lord, that you'll make us whole and that you'll make us healthy, that you'll make us passionate for you and for your kingdom. that you'll give us the strength to put others' needs before our own and to fight for you. May others see Christ in us, the hope of glory. It's in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. Are we good or no? Yep. That's the same thing it did before. Okay, so let me give you a recap, a review of, let me tell you what's happened up until this point. If you look back in Ruth chapter 1 and verse 1 and sweeping through the next 8 or 10 verses, you meet a man, right? And this man has a wife and they have 2 sons. So this man, his wife, and these 2 sons, they decide to take off and go to this other area, the region called Moab. They go to Moab because they heard that there was food in Moab. There was a severe famine in Bethlehem. So they leave Bethlehem, they go to Moab to find food to sustain their family. While they're there, the father dies. After he dies, the sons both marry other women. Okay, they marry wives. Well, after a period of time, the sons also die. So then here's what you're left with. You have the mama, or the wife, and 2 daughters-in-law. The 2 daughters-in-law are both told, go back to your own home country because there's no future for you with me. I'm too old to have children again. I'm not going to have sons. And even if I had a son today, if I had a husband, had a son today, and gave birth to him today, are you going to wait around for these sons to be born? Go back to your own people. Go back to your own gods. Go back to your own lifestyle. 2 of them were given that advice. One of them followed it. One of the 2 daughters-in-law leaves. The other daughter-in-law chooses to remain with Naomi. So Ruth and Naomi make the trek back to Bethlehem because at this point in time they had heard that there's food in Bethlehem. So they make the trek back. As they go back, they arrive to the city. The women of the city greet her and they said, "Isn't this Naomi?" And Naomi said, "Remember, don't call me Naomi because I left out full and I'm returning empty." So she was very much beat down by just the events of life. And so then she gives Ruth, her daughter-in-law that returned with her, some instructions. She tells her to go out to this certain field of a man by the name of Boaz. She goes out to the field. Boaz is what's called a kinsman redeemer, or he is a goel, or a near relative. Because in biblical times, you stayed close to your family. That was where you went to. And if you had death in your family, especially if they were males, then you would immediately go to your uncle or to your older brothers or to other family members in your clan. So that's what Naomi tells Ruth to do. Ruth goes to Boaz. She's out in the field with the other ladies. She was gleaning from the crops, which meant that the harvesters would go through during the barley season. They would harvest the crop, but they wouldn't get everything. There would be some things left in the field. And so these ladies, the very poor of the society, would go behind them and they would pick up the little kernels that were left behind. They would pick up any grain that was left over that was not captured by the harvesters. So Ruth is doing that. Well, in the process of Ruth doing that, Boaz notices her. And so they have an interaction, and she is proven in his eyes to be a virtuous woman because she stayed with Naomi when she didn't have to, and she chose to come back and kind of submit herself to Naomi's God and to Naomi's people. So that's what happens with her. He has a positive viewpoint of her. About 2 months' time passes, and then the events of what we're going to cover today transpire. So about 2 months later. So we're about 2 months into the harvest. So Naomi concocts this plan, and it was a biblical plan. The only thing she knew to do was to send Ruth back to Boaz and say, he's going to be at the threshing floor. I want you to go to the threshing floor, and I want you to watch where he goes. And after you see where he goes, then you wait until everybody else has gone to sleep and everyone's well drunk. They've had their food and their wine and they've gone to sleep. Okay? And once they've done that, then I want you to go to Boaz and I want you to uncover his feet and lie down, which sounds to us in the Western world like a strange thing, but I'll explain that as we get to it. And then she says, he'll wake up, and whatever he says to you, then go do it. Okay, so they concoct this plan. That's kind of scene 1 from today. Scene 2 is Ruth leaves her house, leaves Naomi's, goes to the fields, goes to the threshing floor, and actually does what Naomi tells her to do. Switch to scene 3. Boaz wakes up. As he wakes up, he sees this woman that's lying there with him, and so he responds to this woman. So that's the sweep of where we're going to go to today. The whole point of the message, the objective, is for us to be able to see how God, through our process of our brokenness and vulnerability, 2 key aspects to salvation, brokenness and vulnerability, how God uses those 2 key characteristics to bring us back under his wing and to bring us close to him. And how he uses a man and his generosity, his love, his goodness, his quality of character. Not very many people with character anymore, but this man had it, this quality of character to bring this woman back to God. Make sense? Do you feel positive? Is it still moving up there? Okay. Well, just forget it. I'll wing it. I winged it before. Okay, go to verse 10. So this is Boaz's response. Verse 10, he says, then he said, blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning. Now, this was a risky thing that she did. Now think about this. She was a Moabite woman, so she's going to see a very powerful, wealthy, male, older landowner. So she was crossing all kinds of cultural barriers in doing this. She was risking everything. He could have responded in several terrible ways. One of the things he could have done is said, what the heck are you doing? Get out! Right? He could have immediately said this to her. And if he would have said that, he probably would have raised a ruckus. He would have made her out to be a bad person, right? A woman of the night. And as he made her out to be that, her life would have been over. She'd have been done. Now, in the process of him doing that to her, it also would have affected Naomi. Naomi would have been destroyed in the process because all Naomi's chips are on this event that she's having Ruth do, right? So it's a terribly risky thing that Naomi has her to do. But it's the only choice she's got. She's got a dead husband. He had passed away back in Moab, and now she's on her own. She's living with her mother-in-law, who's also on her own. They have no male protection, no means of income, no means of sustenance. They're completely at the whims of their society, completely at the goodness of their neighbors. That's all they had. So this plan was, go to this man. Now, Boaz was probably at least 10 years her senior, maybe 20. So he's definitely older than Ruth is. So her coming to him, he could have just outright rejected her. He could have looked at her and said, do you realize what you're asking? You're a slave girl. There's 3 words used to describe Ruth that she uses to describe herself here. The first one is, it describes just property, which is really what she was. She was just property. And the second word describes a foreign woman. And this word describing a foreign woman is, she's less than property. She has no rights. She won't be protected. She won't receive anything from us. And so you've got this person that is approaching Boaz that by all rights should just be cast out. I mean, her life could be over, could be ended on this very night. So she goes to him, and he wakes up. She wakes him up. And again, it's probably about midnight when this event is occurring. So the threshing floor, what that was used for is they all the grain would be brought into this room that would be cleared out and had two open sides that faced whichever way the predominant wind blew. Okay, so the sides of this building would have been, or this room would have been open. And then what you would do is you would take where the grain had been piled, and the person would stick this pitchfork-looking object that had large prongs on it, and he would get a scoop of this, and he would throw it up into the air. And as he threw it up into the air, then the chaff or the bad part of the grain would be blown away, and it would leave only the quality, only what could be used to make bread and to make food for them to eat. So he would throw it up in the air, the chaff would be blown away, leaving the good grain for consumption or for food. That's what he was there for. Well, when he finished that, he has a side little area there because he is the landowner. He kind of had a corner room. Any of y'all have a corner office? He kind of had a corner office at the threshing floor. He has his own place. So he goes into this place and he goes to bed. As he goes to bed, she comes in, makes her entrance, and then he wakes up, and that's where we pick up in verse 10. He says, "Blessed are you, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning." Now here's what he means by that. More kindness at the end. That word kindness, write down this word for me, or I may have given it to you in your handout. It's the word hesed. It's H-E-S-E-D. It's a special kind of pure and true love and devotion. It's significant. It's something special. And so what Boaz says to her is, you have shown more hesed at the beginning than at the end than at the beginning. In other words, when she met Ruth, or met Naomi, and they went off and married husbands, she of course had loyalty to Naomi. She kind of belonged to that family unit. But when that family unit died, then she had freedom to leave, to do whatever she wanted to do. She could have gone back to her own land, married her own husband, worshipped her own gods, done her own thing. But for some reason, she chose not to do that. She chooses Naomi. So she comes back with Naomi. Not only did she choose Naomi, she chose Boaz. Now Boaz is probably thinking, I'm an older guy. She is a younger woman. She could have gone and chosen anybody that she wanted. They could have said yes or no, but she chose me. So she finds favor in Boaz's eyes. He says, "Blessed are you, my daughter, for you have shown kindness, more kindness at the end than at the beginning, and that you did not go after young men, whether poor or rich." Verse 11 says, "Now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do all that you request." Now think about this. What had she requested at this point? She asked to be covered by Boaz. Now, when she makes this request, go back, back up a couple verses, and I'll show you how this falls out. Look at verse 8. It said, "Now it happened at midnight, the man was startled, and he turned himself, and there a woman was lying at his feet, and he said, 'Who are you?' She answered, 'I am Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative.'" Now, what you don't see here in this text is she used the same word, the same Hebrew word here for "take me under your wing" that Boaz had used in the previous chapter describing his care for her. So in essence, she had said, "You had mentioned taking me under your wing. I'm here to present myself to you as your amah," which means not a foreign woman and not a local woman that's property, but one stage higher than those two on the social status. She was presenting herself as a woman ready to be wed, as someone who's marrying in a marrying capacity. Okay, so she presents herself to him, and she asks him to cover me with your wings. Now this is it's a beautiful description of her asking, "Will you protect me? Will you take me into your home? Will you make me your wife?" This was a marriage proposal. And it was a marriage proposal that wasn't coming from the man. It was coming from her. And in saying that, she was saying, I am completely vulnerable. I'm completely open. I have no idea what you're going to say. I know this could be the end. So she completely opens herself up to Boaz. Why would she approach Boaz this way? She was recommended by Naomi to do it. Why would Naomi recommend it? There's two primary reasons why Naomi would recommend that Ruth risk everything and go to Boaz at the threshing floor at midnight. Two reasons. What are they?
One, it's part of the law.
Yes? What kind of law?
The law of redemption. The law of buying back what was part of the property, part of basically the family.
Okay, that's one thing. What's the other one? He has, and he is a person of character. At least Naomi and Ruth believe. Okay, so think here for a second how Boaz pictures Christ. Now, Boaz is not Christ, okay, but he's a picture of the redemptive work of Jesus. Because Jesus has also made a way of redemption for me and you. In fact, if Jesus had not made a way of redemption, there would be no way to be redeemed. There'd be no way to be bought back. There would be no way for us to satisfy God's pure, holy, just requirements. There'd be no way to do that. So Boaz here symbolizes the goodness of God's plan of redemption. In other words, he makes a way. He allows, in ultimate irony, a foreign Moabite woman at the very bottom. She was just above the dogs, okay, in their culture. Just above the dogs. Almost of no value. It's hard for us to imagine a human being this way, but this was the society then. She had almost no value. But God uses this account, this actual true historical account, to picture bringing this woman at the very bottom of the societal structure, the bottom rung of the ladder, right, and brings her to a male, wealthy, property owner Jew. So she crosses every boundary to do this. And she does it because it was part of the redemptive law. Because if a female had lost her husband, she had to be redeemed. She had to be brought underneath the covering of some other male. They did not want you to do that outside of your family. You were to do that inside of your family. You were to go back to your family and have your family provide the covering and protection for you. So the first reason why Naomi would have recommended this is because it was God's plan for redemption. It was her way to God. It was her way to be protected. The second reason is because Boaz had a righteous character. In other words, she believed that Boaz would be receptive. She didn't know. Boaz could have thrown her out. Boaz could have called her harlot. She could have been at the whims of society. She could have been stoned the next morning. They don't do stonings in the morning. They would have done it in the evening, but she could have been stoned within 24 hours. Okay, that could have been her. But she knew something about the character of God, something about the character of Boaz, that he was kind, that she thought Boaz would be receptive, that she thought Boaz would take her in. So that's why she approaches him, for those two reasons. Now think about you and me and God, because for me, in this story, I am Ruth, just to kind of bring this into context. I am the one who has nothing and at the bottom of the cultural scale. I am the one who's vulnerable. I am the one that's approaching God with really nothing to bring. I don't really have anything to offer him, anything of worth. Anything that I have in my life is pretty much nasty. So all I have to bring is nastiness to God, right? And Boaz here, for me, represents Yeshua, King Jesus. The one who, with open arms, asks us to come to him. The one who says, I will protect you. You will go underneath the shadow of my wings, the psalmist said, describing the protective power of God. So you see the picture in what's happening? You get it? Say, uh-huh. Verse 11 says, "And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do all that you request." So he says, I'll give you everything that you want. However, the reason why I'll give you everything you want is because you are a virtuous woman. So he looks at Ruth and he commends Ruth's loyalty and dedication to Naomi and to her people. Now, lest you mistake this, when he says she is a virtuous woman, he doesn't mean she's a sinless woman. He doesn't mean that she's better or more elite in character-wise than others. He means that he's seen and evidenced throughout the town, because all the people were talking about this woman that Naomi brought back, her daughter-in-law named Ruth. All the people in the village were talking about this, right? It was big on CNN. The nightly news was all over this. And so as the people were talking about this woman Naomi, they thought, why would this woman Ruth? Why would Ruth come back with Naomi? Why would she do that when she could have just gone to her own people, lived her own life, been protected by her people? Why come here? Why come here with a group of people that doesn't respect her, who she is, or her lineage, or her people, where she could be threatened, where she could be vulnerable? Why? Right? So the people began to respect Ruth. They respected what she did. They respected her commitment. They respected her loyalty. And so as a result of their evaluation of what she had done over the past several months, they concluded that she was a virtuous woman. She was a good woman. Okay? Look at verse 12. It says, "Now it is true, I am a close relative. However, there is one closer than I." Now, I don't know if I put this on your handout or not, but this is the word goel, G-O''E-L. What's that mean? What that means is, I am your kinsman, which means family person. I'm your relative. And the second part of that is, I am your redeemer. So I am your family member who redeems you. I am the one who offers you protection. When she lifted up his covers and went underneath the bottom of his covers at his feet, that's called his kanap. And what that represents is the protection that he provides over her. That was his responsibility. She approached him because he was a close family member. So she was supposed to approach him. That's what was supposed to happen. Okay, so he says, it's true, I am a close relative. I am a kinsman redeemer. However, there's one closer than me. Now what he means by that is, there's someone in the family line that's closer to you than I am. Okay, so look at what he says he must do. Verse 13, he says, "Stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good, let him do it." In other words, he's going to go to this close family member. You'll see this happening next week. He's going to go to this close family member. He's going to say, here is Ruth. She's presented herself for marriage. She's asked to be redeemed by the family. You are the closest living clan member. Will you redeem her? So he's going to go and ask her. But just so she won't be vulnerable or feel unprotected or feel worthless or rejected, he goes out of his way. Listen to what Boaz says. He says, but if he does not want to perform the duty for you, I will perform the duty for you. As the Lord lives, lie down until morning. So here's what he tells her. He says, even if he won't perform it, he then makes an oath. As the Lord lives, I will. So he's saying, I will do it. I will stand in the gap. I will bring you into my family. You will be my wife. You will be redeemed. You will be whole. You'll be complete. You'll no longer be vulnerable. I will be the practical expression of the love that God has for you on this planet. You'll see God's love, God's acceptance, God's forgiveness, God's grace, God's protection, God's nurturing. You're going to see that all through me. I guarantee you. These are Scott's words. I guarantee you, even if he doesn't do it, I will. Okay, so she feels the comfort of knowing that she will be redeemed. Okay, then he tells her, lie down till morning. Why did he tell her that? That's one thing. What else? Why would he tell her lie down till morning? Probably, and I think he also probably went, shh. Because if she would have been discovered by somebody else, it would have gone south for her quickly, right? It would have gone badly. That's why Naomi instructed her to spy out where Boaz's place is, where Boaz is going to rest his head that night. You identify that, wait until midnight, and then you go in there after everyone is asleep. Yes, sir?
Naomi just seemed like she was pulling a whole lot of strings.
Yeah, no, Naomi's got it together.
From the beginning, it just seemed like she just pulling a whole bunch because this chick, who don't know, excuse me, we call her chick.
Yeah, you can't call Ruth a chick.
She has no idea of none of these cultural things that they do.
That's true.
Kind of like blindly following what Ruth tells her, what Naomi tells her to do.
That's right.
She's putting the girl's life in jeopardy, to the point where if you don't do this, you're going to die. So she's pulling a whole lot of strings. She's going to say, go to Boaz's feet. I know Boaz got a little place. I mean, when you look at it from that point of view, she pulling a whole lot of strings in back.
True, Bob.
What Sean said is because it kind of echoes all the way back to the beginning. If you don't do this, you're going to die. If you don't do this, you're going to die. And the whole thing, the first mistake was going down to, I think it was a mistake going down to that land. If you don't do this, you're going to die.
Right.
And now the whole tension is, if you don't do this, the right thing, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And she did the right thing. Thank God.
Yeah, and remember before I close this morning about Naomi's name and about the emptiness she felt. So she lays down at his feet until morning. She arose when no one could recognize her. Then he said, do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Who's he talking to? Says that she arose before morning while it was still dark so she could get out of there before she's discovered, right? And so, which is what Boaz told her to do. Then Boaz says, don't tell anybody she was here. Who's he talking to? Say again? Well, there were probably at least two people present, and this was a wealthy guy. So robbery and thievery was rampant in those days. So the wealthy people always had people, right? They had their entourage. So Boaz had people with him, and so whoever was there close to him, at least a bodyguard or two, maybe a confidant, maybe a family friend, somebody that his dad maybe had sent with him that had helped groom Boaz for the business, the family business. But there were a couple people that were most likely present. He tells them, don't tell anybody anything about this. Now, look at verse 14 again. It says, do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Now, he said, don't let it be known that she came to the threshing floor because the threshing floor was a place of significance in Jewish society. In other words, it was a place where the crop, the first increase of the crop was coming in. So there was all different kinds of prayer surrounding this, all different kinds of buildup. It would have been an important event. Boaz going to the threshing floor would have been known by the entire city. So this was a massive thing. So he says, don't tell anybody that she came here. Then he goes on to say, in verse 15, then he said, bring the shawl that is on you and hold it. Who's he talking to? Ruth. So now he turns from talking to the men to talking to Ruth. And it was strange, again, for a man of his position, he's male, talking to a female, which was a no-no. He was, at least in public, with your husband not present. Secondly, he was a landowner, which means he was wealthy, talking to a peasant, which was also never done. Thirdly, he was Jewish, talking to a Moabite. So he's smashing all cultural boundaries, all societal expectations to reach this woman. So not only is Ruth taking a great risk here, I mean, Boaz is sticking out his neck to reach her. So a pretty sweet thing that he does. Then he tells her, bring in your shawl, bring in your garment. And she held it. He measured out 6 ephahs of barley and laid it on her. Then she went to the city. Why did he do that? Why did he give her the barley and tell her, take this back with you? I think he cared for her. I think he cared for Naomi, and he knew that they had not yet been redeemed. There was no one taking care of them. She was vulnerable. And so she had been just picking up the scraps, the leftovers of the field. And then he loads her down, fills her shaw with as much as she can carry of grain to take back, of barley to take back to Naomi. Now, when she returns to Naomi, they're going to have a discussion. Naomi's going to kind of sit back and say, okay, well, I concocted this entire plan. You went out and executed it. Now tell me what happens. Now look at verse 16. It says, when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, is that you, my daughter-in-law? And she said, and she told her all that the man had done for her. In verse 17, she said, these 6 ephahs of barley he gave to me and said to me, do not go empty-handed to your mother-in-law. Then she said, sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out, for the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day. Very confident, isn't Naomi? She's like, you sit right there, sit down. Rest assured, he's going to go take care of this, and he will not rest until it's completed. Now, one of the amazing things that happens here is Naomi is now cared for through a foreign Moabite widow. Pretty amazing. This woman of Israel is now being cared for by a foreign Moabite widow. This woman from Israel, Naomi, who had left full and come back empty, right? Because she lamented to the other ladies of the village, don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me empty, because the Lord's afflicted me. He's punished me, right? Which is how we feel many times in life when things don't go our way, right? We feel like God's punishing us. That's the way she felt when she came back. She was probably, if we were to diagnose her today from a counseling perspective, she was probably clinically depressed, or at least had a chronic depression lasting over 90 days. So she was probably full-blown depressed. I mean, if there had been a psychiatrist around, she'd have been on Prozac before nightfall. So she was in a bad place and saw herself as empty before God, right? And so what ends up happening is through the kinsman redeemer, she is not only filled, Ruth is not only filled, but also Naomi is filled. And so I thought about this, and it's through Jesus Christ that all my nastiness is cleansed. It's through Jesus Christ that all my emptiness is filled. It's through Jesus Christ that all my brokenness is healed. It's through Jesus Christ that all the rejection that I have in life is wiped away for full and beautiful acceptance. Everything in me that lacks is fulfilled in Yeshua, in Jesus, right? Everything in Ruth that was lacking was fulfilled, or at least it's on the way to it. You'll see what happens next, but at least is being fulfilled in the person and the work of Boaz. Questions, comments?
Actually, I'd like to amend what Sean said. Actually, I think is overall God's plan. Actually, God's probably inspired it. Because I don't guess none of them knew about Jewish law, but it's actually God that probably gave her to go and do all these things.
Naomi probably did know Jewish law, and yes, it was God who inspired it, I believe, because I believe in God's sovereignty. So I believe this was all part of God's plan. Other comments? Yes, sir.
I think it's just kind of cool how, like, sometimes you don't see nowhere in there where it says that Naomi said, I need to hear from God before I make these decisions to do these things. I need to pray and lay it down and make sure that I'm in alignment and make sure I get 3 witnesses to let me know that this is what I need to be doing. She just did what she thought she needed to do, whether it was kind of like, it was in accordance to the law. It was in accordance to the word. She did it.
Yep.
And then God just intervened. I mean, he was already intervening, but I think a lot of times we feel like we have to do, like, I'm not going to make no moves until until I hear a voice. You know what I mean? But when you should just go ahead and do what you need to do. God will take care of you.
That's called charismatics, and baby Christians have taught people to do that, to look for a sign or look for something to be written in the sky. And it's nice if you've got a sign or something written in the sky, because then you don't have to be very close to God and you don't have to be seeking His face. He can just deliver you a personal, telegram saying, this is what I want you to do. But you're right. Yeah, she didn't do that. I tell believers, act upon your desires as long as you're close to God. If you act upon your desires when you're close to God, then you make pretty wise decisions. Make sure you don't violate any prohibitions in Scripture. Make sure you follow biblical commands. But then after you've done those two things, your heart's desire is significant. So if you're choosing between two equal options, choose one, because God works out those choices in the end, and He's working in and through your desires in the middle, and He inspired much of that before you even thought about it in the very beginning. So God is working all over that situation. Other comments? I've got some stuff to tell you about SkyPoint, but before I get into that, tell me about anything else you have. Are you all getting it? You understand Ruth? I've heard some reports from you all about the last couple weeks that Pastor Carol did amazing. And some other pastor probably spoke before that, and some other pastor probably spoke before that. So thank you for everybody for stepping in. Any other questions about the book of Ruth?
Hey Scott, one thing I was going to say.
Go.
You were talking about the vulnerability that Ruth displayed, and I think of sometimes churches have made this mistake, I think, in the past of telling people, all right, whatever your problems are, come to Christ, they'll go away. Instead of painting the reality of the picture, which is that we're called to carry a cross, that we're called to give up everything. But what makes that happen is when we recognize that we've got nothing.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought that hit me was this hymn that was bored into my skull as a kid, because we would do 14 verses of it after every message. But the song, Just As I Am, I don't know if anybody else grew up in a Baptist church, but maybe you sing that song to death. And they got to the point where it didn't even affect me anymore, because I had sung it so much. I learned it as a child to sound it out syllabically.
Yeah.
Syllables before I even do the words, but it says, just as I am, without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou didst become to thee. It's just as I am. I've got nothing to offer. I can't say anything. I'm guilty. I don't have a plea. The only thing I can say is that you shed your blood for me, and you told me to come to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good stuff. When Naomi told Ruth to go do this, one thing I left out that I'll throw in there, she told her to be prepared when she went to see Boaz. And this is classic counsel from one female to another. You know what she told her to do? Go take a bath. It's good advice. I recommend it to everyone. What else did she say? Yeah. Put on some Elizabeth, whatever the perfume of the day was. She said, spray some perfume on your neck. And then what was the third thing she told her to do? Yep. I want you to put on a beautiful dress. Put on something nice. Now, the text doesn't indicate that she wore anything extravagant, and she wore no jewelry. But she did wear something that was the best that she had, probably. And she had done this to present herself as a potential wife. So she had done this. Now she does one other thing, and I'll go to you. The other thing that she does, and I think she does this in the help of Naomi and God. But remember, I told you she started off, her true role was as a foreign servant, which had no rights in their society. Well, there's a particular word that she could have used to describe her as that, which she starts off being described as that at the beginning of Ruth. The next word that you see describing this woman, describing herself, is as a servant that's here in the native country of Israel. And but one that's on the lower end of the social scale. She was basically just property, but she was at least Jewish. Okay? The third word, the word that she uses when she approaches Boaz, the word Almah, or A-M-A-H, that word means I am a woman ready to be wed. And so think what happened in her mind. Something happened psychologically. Yes, she got her body together, right? But something happened to her psychologically. She had to get to a point where she thought in her head, I'm going to go approach Boaz and I'm going to present myself as a potential wife. I think that's important because there are some people, have any of y'all ever been so low in your life that you couldn't pray? Or felt like just you can't breathe, or just, you look around and everyone's singing and smiling and you're like, you don't wish anything bad for them, but you understand what I'm saying? I think something has to happen where God breathes a little bit of strength in us to where we see that we're not foreigners and we're not just property, but we are His bride. Something has to happen in Him nurturing us to bring us to the place where we're even ready to say, God, will you marry me? Will you adopt me? Will you become my God and make me your son, make me your daughter? I think something has to happen. Any other questions, comments?
Then there's one more thing later on. Now he says, approach us this way, come boldly before the throne. So there's a graduation from not only being accepted, but now really
coming with confidence, boldness.
But she wasn't no pterodactyl. She had to be kind of cute. Really.
I'm glad you brought the deep spiritual truths into this message, Bishop. Anybody else? Okay, let me tell you where we are in Sky Point. As you know, I am transitioning out. I have a couple weeks that I'll be here with you, and then I will be vamonos. I'm still going to be working behind the scenes for you. I will be serving at the pleasure of the elders, and I will, my initial plan is to continue to build the counseling ministry, SkyPath. It's going great. I had 3 amazing ladies that traveled across the country with me last week or 2 weeks ago, something like that, and went to a counseling conference out in Denver. And for the first time, we were the presenters at one of the workshops, which was kind of neat. Just a little podunk travelers rest, South Carolina, and we're presenting in Denver. So it was just wonderful. So things are going great. So we're going to continue to build on the counseling side. We're going to continue to certify counselors and work in that regard. I'm wanting to plant a church in Malden, and I'm not going to be the pastor of that church when it comes to, so just so you hear it directly from the horse's mouth, the church, in my opinion, that gets no better than Sky Point. So if you're going to be a pastor of a church, I think this is the pinnacle. This is the peak. You don't go anywhere. You can't go up from here, I don't think. So I'm not going to pastor. My thoughts are I will probably never pastor again. I've done some things, said some things that are irrevocable. And while God's grace is very real and very present, I'm just not the guy that I used to be. So I'm kind of a little busted up. I'm not saying woe is me. I mean, I'm fine. I'm not going to go jump off a cliff today. But I'm excited to see who that next person will be, because I believe that person will be somebody that from eternity past God has prepared and is excited and fired up and ready to do this and take Sky Point to the next level. I'm confident that will be the case. So I'd like for you guys to know the plan. The elders have met about a dozen times, many of those times as a group, right? And many of those times individually. They've met with 2 primary candidates. There were some other candidates on the periphery that wanted this position that were not under serious consideration. This process typically takes between 12 and 24 months in many churches. We're a little bit under the 6-month point, so we're doing good. okay? Don't think that we're just kicked back, not doing anything. We are. There are lots of considerations. We have identified someone that has our confidence, and he has the confidence of the entire elder team. So that once there are some final issues that are settled, both in that pastor's family and their existing life situation, then our plan is to present that pastor to you as a formal recommendation from the elders. And then at that point in time, you will have your opportunity to discuss that and pray about that and question that and see if you sense that it's God's heart as well. There are 4 things that we vote on here at SkyPoint. If we purchase land or incur any kind of indebtedness, the annual budget, something else I can't remember, and a senior pastor. Okay? So this is one of those categories that it's big. This is the legal aspect of church life. We're not very formal here. We believe that we operate on the basis of relationships and not rules. So we're not very rule-centered. But at this point in time, since we're in uncharted waters, we are following or adhering to our Constitution and bylaws, of which any of you could have a copy of. Many of you probably already have them, but you're welcome to those. Email Mark. We hope to be able to present them to you within the coming weeks. It's hard for us to set a time frame on it because there are just things outside of our control. I can tell you that another candidate that was under consideration is an amazing candidate, and we absolutely love him as well. It's just we felt like that this individual that the elders agreed upon was the man that God had identified to fulfill this role. So that's our plan. My plan to go to Malden is because it's close enough to receive your support, but it's far enough away to not conflict with attendance here. In other words, I want this body to continue to grow and be healthy. I'd like for you to get to 200-ish. I think 200 is the ideal size in our culture and our environment. And then I'd like for you to see you take a core group of you that God identifies and you self-identify, and for you to go plan another work somewhere else. So, and for that to, just like when Satan tried to stamp out the spread of the gospel in the New Testament, and he tried to drive a wedge between Paul and Silas, maybe? Paul and somebody. And by doing so, he stomped on the embers that were burning for the gospel, but then they just went floating up into the sky and caught other pastures on fire for the gospel of God, right? So that's what I'm wanting to see happen with you guys. I want us to continue that, to press on and to do that. I am going to be transitioning primarily into financial services. I've told you this before, but I'm going to tell you again because it continues to be the wrong stuff that people are saying and thinking. There's a multitude of reasons for this. I have some health issues that are significant, but my reason for doing this is not solely based upon my health. I have some personal and emotional, relational issues that are significant. I'm trying to kind of process through that, having some difficulty, and the difficulty is mostly because I'm not really sure who I am anymore. And my identity has been tied up in SkyPoint for so long, it's just kind of weird when you switch roles. So pray for me, pray for my family. The struggle is very real, and I really don't know where that's going to go. But that's my most honest answer to you. Normally, I'm the guy that has the answers, and I feel confident about things, and I feel led by God and directed by His Word and filled with His Spirit. And I'm just not there right now. So how's that for honesty? So that's where I am, and I ask that you pray for me and for my family. But I'm very, I'm good. It's the right decision. It's the right time. Bringing another pastor in at this point in time is the right thing to do. Me removing myself from a position of leadership is the right thing to do. Me being with you guys and just being a cheerleader of the church leadership is the right thing to do. Me seeking to see if God will and open a door for us to plant SkyPoint Malden is the right thing to do. We want to go SkyPoint Myrtle Beach after that. Mark has signed up for that assignment. Dallas, wherever. So we are excited about the prospects. Any questions about where, I wanted you to know where the process is. It's moving along well. We have absolute harmony amongst the leadership team, which is a blessing. I'm telling you, there's lots of places where the leadership are fussing and feuding. We haven't had any of that. God's just been good to us. We've loved each other. These men have loved me. You guys have loved me and loved my family, and you've given me the privilege of a lifetime. So the memories I have from this will never be taken away from me. And I thank you for everything. I plan on being here for the next couple weeks. And then as soon as we have consensus, or as soon as the timing is right for the elders to make the recommendation, we will make a recommend to you as the church family. Questions about that?
I would just say your identity is in Christ. It's always been in Christ. It's not outside. It's not, it's not separate. You have an identity because of Christ. It's not separate. My identity is in Christ. I may be an individual created, but still my identity is within Him because I cannot separate myself from Him. So no matter what He leads you or guides you to do, your identity is still in Christ.
True. It's a true statement, Eric. Any other questions about where we're headed? Anything happening? We're very transparent, so we will lay it all on the line for you right now.
And just FYI, we're also in the process of, we're still talking about and planning towards relocating where we meet.
Yes.
That is an ongoing thing. We're still wanting to get down to the gym, get air conditioned there, get it fixed up a little bit, so we can realistically do that. I don't think that's secret. I mean, we talked about.
No. Yeah, we're wanting to move. Okay, we're wanting for us to meet down there as a group, expand our capacity a little bit, and do some other things. I saw a hand over here. Well, thank you, Joey. Thank you. Anybody else?
Scott,
Mm-hmm.
could you tell everybody the importance of our counseling?
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me, Barbara mentioned just real briefly, I'll give you a real quick snapshot of this. We are the only counseling certification facility in South Carolina. I think, right? We're the only one in South Carolina. Now, there's another one in Georgia, and there are 27 in the United States, but we're the only one in South Carolina. So God's really blessed us there. And we have several people that have gone through training. The course is 3 years long. It covers half a dozen different books, tons of scripture memory, 40 hours of supervised counseling, all different kinds of case studies, and a brutal oral exam at the end by myself. So, I mean, they really have to know their Bible, have a heart for God, and love people. So if you know somebody in tragedy, then please direct them to us. Okay? Now, I've told you my spiritual state. I'm not doing any active counseling right now because I should not be. But we're continuing. I lean on our support staff. We've got a great group of folks that are all level 3 self-con graduates that know their stuff. So I'm relying on them for their insight and for their leadership. Is that good? This Thursday night, I'd like for you to come. My role as a financial advisor is officially kicking off next week. I've never done that here with you or even told you about it because I was always your pastor, and because of a conflict of interest, we don't do it. We don't try to sign you up for every multi-level marketing scheme or try to get you to buy the next new thing that the pastor's trying to sell, because I think that's cheesy and unethical. Okay? So we don't do that here. We want you to come here and just love the Lord and want to worship God. And my position of authority is being removed, and I'm just going to be worshiping alongside you. So that will start this Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. down at Skycom. So you're welcome to attend. It's free. You should have a handout in your horizon. Ushers and usherettes, can you please come ush?